again, this is Ben Hitchcock Cross talking to you today for Deliberate Indifference Wisconsin. I am here with Debbie Keither for a long-awaited whistleblower update. I guess we're sneaking it in just on the deadline for May here. So we've got a lot of exciting news to keep you up to date with, and then some things that we're looking forward to. So Debbie, what's the first thing that we've got?
Okay, well, there's a lot going on. So, just to bring people up to speed, there are about 29 probable causes out there against Milwaukee Public Schools that have been issued by the state. We are just in conjunction with those. There's more, but those are the ones
And those are active right now?
active. Yes.
Okay, so
active.
all those people, in theory, are certified to hearing. There should be discovery going on in all of those cases. People should ultimately having to answer questions under oath and provide documents, right?
Correct. And that's maybe why people are seeing from time to time a lot of activity like with subpoenas or certain documents, because these individuals have won the right to go through the discovery process by achieving probable cause. And that is a huge number of probable causes against Milwaukee Public Schools.
And is this isolated, for example, just to your department?
Actually, the ones I am referencing are isolated to the academics department in Milwaukee Public Schools. And I want to clarify something that a lot of people don't realize is that these are employment cases at the moment. They're in that jurisdiction of the Equal Rights Division under the Department of Workforce Development. However, these individuals suffered from discrimination and retaliation because they were blowing the whistle on things that are improper in the running of a school district. So although some people might want to say, well, that's an employee problem or an adult problem, it became an adult problem because there were people who were not willing to inflict certain things on children that are not the mission of public education. So I think that's a very important thing to highlight.
Okay, and if I can just put that another way, because, inflict certain things, what we really mean is the management were asking workers to do things, and the workers were bringing this to that thought were either legal or discriminatory or something along those lines. And in one way or another, they let's say, blew the whistle, alerted other people to that information, and that's what's bringing a lot of these. It's the initial act by management saying, we want you to do something that's illegal to these students, and the professionals that have been put in place there, despite Posleyism, are standing up and saying, this is unacceptable. Somebody else needs to take a look at it, and then they're facing repercussions.
Yes, that's an excellent synopsis, and that's precisely where these individuals stand. So when you think about the millions and millions of dollars and how things are not necessarily lining up budgetarily wise or even policy wise, these are the people who have been trying to resolve those things internally and just have suffered the personal consequences of that.
Right. And they're they may be doing it for themselves, but it does sound like a lot of what this is focused on is, and what you were saying, that this is a kid-based problem too, is these issues are raising either children issues either directly because of the discrimination that's being asked of professionals to discriminate against children, or indirectly because it's affecting the working conditions and everything else that's going along in MPS, which is indirectly then affecting the classroom.
Absolutely. All of those pieces. Okay. So I'm glad that we kind of pointed that out for people. Because we are trying to work towards better systems. So this is the kind of work, unfortunately, that needs to be done. I also wanted to point out that we are waiting from Judge Brown for Jose Garcia Joven, Dr. Garcia Joven's first case where he had 6 probable causes. We're waiting for his decision. And interestingly enough, that hearing completed with MPS not calling any of the 9 witnesses that they listed as their witnesses. So they called nobody. The judge did not require Bob Peterson or Keith Posley to appear, although they had been subpoenaed. So
Jeremiah Holiday, maybe.
I'm sorry, Jeremiah Holiday. Yes, that's right, Jeremiah Holiday. and Keith Posley, although they were subpoenaed for the case, they did not, they were not enforced, those subpoenas. And so MPS not only did not present those witnesses, but they didn't present any of the witnesses that they listed in their position statements and their discovery production. So they just kind of showed up and rested their case on the day that it got handed off to them.
And we have some firsthand sources for that. We've got some video. I know we've put up a little bit with them giving Dr. Garcia Joven a hard time, him saying that he had COVID, and Judge Brown in particular demanding that he testify, and MPS coming and saying that he's actually, he's located in Colombia. And, despite our telling them that he had COVID and showing them that he had a COVID form, the state, particularly Judge Brown, seemed to really want to get into his personal details about how and when and why he got COVID. And that was really surprising to me.
Yeah.
And you can see that, I think, at the time. But I think what was even more surprising to me was that very afternoon I got back to my office and we got the probable cause in Garcia Joven 2. And something I think that they had thought that they were all clear for, and they could issue that one so that there wouldn't be any connection. But lo and behold, he had COVID. So that kind of messed with the plan. And I say that deliberately here because the timing seems to be absolutely too suspicious.
The timing, you could not, 365 days of the year, you cannot orchestrate that timing any more precisely than what happened there. There just had to be intervention.
And then combined with that fact, we then asked them to consolidate the two cases. And then I think when you see Judge Brown's reaction, I think you'll be able to make your decision as to whether you think that was on purpose or an accident.
And I really encourage people to watch those videos of the Garcia Joven closings because you do a phenomenal job of pointing out the variance in treatment between the employer and the employee. And it's for most of us, it's a very stark comparison. You can very clearly see, but for whatever reason, these judges or even the attorneys on the other side, they think it's business as usual and people are just going to be blinded and not see these things jumping out from the scene.
And we're talking about the treatment from the Equal Rights Division,
yes,
right?
the whole different set of standards for the employee, much harsher, much more critical, way out of line with what 227 and administrative procedure dictates. Those are technicalities that the onus always falls on the employee, but yet they look the other way when the employer presents complete haphazard, completely unsound presentation of the situation. Nobody says anything about that. So
that let's say that the Garcia Joven case is rich in opportunities for comparing the ERD and in particular Judge Stephanie Brown's treatment of employees and employers. And I think it's interesting. You can go back and check on the Tate hearing, for example, and there seems to be something about that Garcia Joven matter in particular that really is different.
yes.
And I think there's a lot of different possibilities that come out of that, but in particular, I think you're going to have to just judge for yourself, but there does seem to be a lot of something particularly going on in that Garcia Joven matter that's different than all other matters.
There is tangible bias that's very palpable. So I would love to kind of dissect that more in the future, but people should watch it because it's good information for them to have. In the meantime, too, I'll mention our Milwaukee Public Schools board kind of has changed over with some new board members.
We don't, I think it's fair to say we gave them a little bit of a opportunity to reform themselves, not reform, but to acclimate and get back up to speed. We don't want to let anybody have the illusion that that this is a new board or anything completely different here. Every indication that I have is that it's business as usual. However, it is a good opportunity to point out that these new board members have a job to do, and they have a lot of learning that they have to do, both on how to behave and get things done in a meeting.
Yeah.
Right? And behave, what I mean is what are the proper procedures to get work on behalf of your constituents so that, Jackie Mann doesn't rule against you or, come talk to you in your ear or something like that in front of everybody. Or they also need to know what's going on, like how many probable causes there are and where are the big problems and what work needs to be done. And my suggestion to them is they don't take management's word for it. They go find out for themselves.
Right. And two things with this new board setup is that, like you just said, a lot of the people are the same. So I'll give you a good example. Marva Herndon, who's now the president, she is sprinkled heavily throughout all of the documentation that we have obtained through discovery. Her knowledge, her awareness, as well as the other board members, the ones that are still there, they do not get to wash their hands of responsibility. And even if they did leave, like in the case of Bob Peterson, stepping down at a very convenient time and then going on to present falsehoods in an outright affidavit, that does not relieve this board of any responsibility. Changing the deck chairs around does not mean the entity itself washes itself clean.
Because there's a couple ways to look at it, right? So let's just say that Bob Peterson is the bad actor here, okay? And it's all Bob Peterson's fault, just for sake of argument. Let's say then Bob Peterson leaves. It doesn't change the status for the kids and all the problems that Bob Peterson, let's say, would have created at MPS.
Correct.
Right? So this board there still has problems that they need to solve, even if a board member leaves. Right? So that's part of why there's a board, and it's the board itself that's responsible for the teaching and the care of our pupils, and not just Bob Peterson.
That's right, and he did that as a representative in that function, in his role as board president. So that doesn't leave with him, and it's not like an Etch-a-Sketch. You don't shake it and everything starts clean. All of those wrongs, all of the budget issues remain. And those are because of the choices that group of people made while they were in that position. And
I think it's fair to say that we also, in addition to that Marva Herndon is actually taking, in football, there's this term called the handoff, right? When the runner's getting in trouble, they will hand the ball off to somebody else, right?
Yes.
But that person that they're handing the ball off to them, that they're from the same team. They're running on a pattern that they've already established ahead of time.
Right.
And they're running for the same goal, which is to go get that touchdown.
Right.
Right? And so that, I think, is a fair comparison between the handoff from the old president to the handoff to the new president.
Right. Absolutely. And they do have some common goals. Some of them they've already achieved. Some of them are lofty goals, but many of them, unfortunately, have been captured and documented as outright behaviors that are not conducive to a functional board. So
just for example, in the Calvin Furman complaint, okay, against Posley.
Yes.
We can say that we know that Bob Peterson was involved in that and did not take any action to resolve that complaint in any way for the benefit of the students. Okay? We can say that Bob Peterson has left. We know this because we've got the documentation that they've said that we know who was at the meetings, we know what happened. Mm-hmm. Okay? But we can also say that Marva Herndon participated in those exact same meetings, had all of that same discussion, and
proceeded on a course that is in opposition of what they're supposed to do based on law and policy.
Right. And I can say one other thing, which is at the, let's say, some call it community, there was boisterous, let's say, communication with the board at board meetings. Okay? And Marva Herndon I heard her personally tell Bob Peterson to shut down the meeting. I'm pretty sure you can hear it in the recording.
Yeah.
Okay? She's the one edging him to stifle democracy immediately because from what it seemed to me, she did not want to have that input on her. She wanted to conduct her business without that input.
That's right. And she has as you mentioned, they have a set of plays that they want to execute. And when things come in that aren't part of the playbook, working towards perhaps a 8% raise, which again, very needed, very appropriate, but that's all she wants to focus on. She does not want to do any of the challenging work that exists, which is cleaning up a very dysfunctional and abusive hierarchy in Milwaukee public schools.
And so we're getting way into a lot of the analysis that I think we were trying not
Yes,
to.
yes.
But what the heck? So I just want to say, because I think that really encapsulates how we can look at this situation, okay? It is what we call a false dichotomy. That means the choice, there's not a either or choice here, okay? So let's say that Marva Herndon is looking at we can take follow through on the Calvin Furman complaint against Keith Posley about Marla Brunei.
Right.
Or we can get our 8%, okay? And I think that that's completely wrong. I think
both.
you can do both.
Absolutely.
I think you have to do both.
You must.
And I think that to refuse to do one and for the sake of the other is a betrayal of the pupils, the board, and really of your own integrity.
It is, and I think it's lazy too, because it's like you're taking the easy win that people are going to be happy about, and you're not dealing with the real work to make system change and to make improvement that is long overdue and that you have documentation of. I mean, you've seen it. We have it documented that you have gone through and you have awareness of this. For you to proceed on a course of inaction or furthermore, just letting people, looking the other way, after to me, that is a complete failure. And anybody can come in and rubber stamp something that everybody wants. Okay, and then take credit for it. Oh, look how great I am. Look what I did. You didn't have any opposition there.
Right.
So big deal. Do the real work. That's what somebody with integrity will do. And they'll have those difficult conversations and make those choices where some people are not going to be happy and they're going to get an application of policy and procedure that hasn't, fallen their way like it usually is,
Right. Well, if you have guests over to your house and you've cleaned up your front room, right? But that's one thing. But if we go back into the kitchen, right, and there's dirty pans and cockroaches, or we go more importantly, I guess, and say in the children's room, right, and there's filth everywhere, well, then you've got a dirty house.
Right. So that is the work they need to do. It goes all the way to this current budget, which I'm going to be talking a little bit more about a Baker Tilly audit in a different video, that people really have to, and citizens have to be aware as well, because they're not going to hold themselves accountable.
Right.
They won't do it.
If there's money that's missing, that money should have been going to kids.
That's right. No question. So, well, let's change gears, because you wanted to give an update on Lucky, and I want to hear about that one too, because I know Judge Molitor there was a set of hearings, so you had hearings for almost a week solid with Judge Molitor. It is now, the ball is in Judge Molitor's court, so to speak, and you are waiting for that decision. What kinds of things should we be thinking about when we see what comes out?
Well, okay, so there's two real big themes that I'd like to discuss, and I think I'm going to take the lighter one first.
Okay.
Which is, of course, there were two new recordings that we discovered over the course of that week that they didn't give to us.
There you go.
Judge Molitor hasn't made a decision on that. She's, reserved that is the word I think she used. And then again, we've got one hand tied behind our back.
Yeah.
And they're like whoopsies.
Yeah, and here's that rule again, where, you know what? the employer forgot to give you something.
Inadvertent.
Again and again. Oh, woe is them. Let's just try to have some grace for them. And then when supposedly something happens on the other side, it's come down with a smackdown and
Right.
everything's dismissed and forget it. You're a horrible person. I don't understand that. That's not being objective.
It does take a certain kind of reasoning to be able to have applied such different standards.
Yeah, I don't get it.
When your one job is to apply the standard equally.
Yeah.
It does. It seems like that would be a lot of work.
I mean, like you said, the definition of judge is to look at the evidence. I mean, we all know what that is, and objectively, unbeknownst of who the parties are, make a decision. And if it's the employer, they get a pass every time. Oh, you forgot to give something, and here's all the emails showing you knew it existed, you discussed it, you met with witnesses prior, and you had discussion about it, and you never intended to give it to us. However, you accidentally uncovered it here, or someone let the cat slip out of the bag by mentioning it, and now we know about it, or the employee knows about it, and it's no big deal.
It's no big deal. So
Classic.
the other one is, let's say the closest thing that I get to experiencing racism in Milwaukee County is through cases like this. But I think that there is some of the revelations about the working conditions that Mr. Lucky and other sheriff's deputies, black sheriff's deputies, have to put up with is sort of like 1972 without the nooses. It was just sort of heartbreaking for me to see how nothing has changed. And not just for them, but also for, there's just so much testimony that comes out that the whole purpose of the sheriff's department is pointed at controlling black bodies. And that when any black deputies are, even raise that issue, there's the violent system is just turned right around on them, and they're pushed from being marginally being a part of the system to being pushed right out and having, again, the whole lens and focus of what that organization, and this isn't my testimony, this is the testimony of plenty of people there, that is, again, the numbers are shocking. And I think that this is the one basic question that we're looking at here is, let's just assume that 20% of the deputies aren't white, okay? 80% are white, 20% aren't white. Well, when you look at Milwaukee County, we don't have anything like those kind of statistics, okay? Especially the city of Milwaukee, okay? So I was asking many of these sheriff's deputy employees, will you agree with me that blacks and whites have the same ability to be a deputy? Right? Well, then how about and this is another fact. In the courts, the bailiffs are mostly non-white, but on the road, they're astronomically white. So I asked them, how is it, are black people better at being bailiffs? They couldn't answer. How about are white people better at being on the road? Nobody had an answer for that.
And that's because they don't even bother to do the analysis. And then when the analysis is placed in front of them, the numbers don't lie. The data is there. So what is the rationale?
And so this is something that is, I think what you said was really right on there, that many of these people had not thought of it until that day.
They don't.
Okay? But the answer is that the decision couldn't be XYZ, couldn't be racist because I'm not racist.
Right.
Therefore,
and please believe me when I tell you this. And therefore, it just can't be that way.
It would kind of be racist of you to suggest that I was racist.
Yeah.
That was sort of the attitude that I saw there. And I think that there's always... humans are always more complicated than that. But if that really is the attitude, then I think that would go a long way to, in management, that goes a long way in explaining why we have the kind of sheriff's department that we have.
And why our city is struggling so year after year after year. And I think one thing that I've learned and I've watched the Lucky case. I've been following it, so I'm very aware of what you're talking about here, and I recommend that people look at it, because when we talk about this concept of racism, I don't think people have any idea how to quantify it.
Right.
What does it look like in the workplace? And let me tell you something that I learned, I think is very important, is very basic idea, and it is when you begin to use the systems to take someone's livelihood away from them, to remove their ability to work and be employed, although they have every qualification and they haven't violated anything, yet you are taking this opportunity away from them, that is a huge indicator that there is discrimination going on. And the words that they say, obviously, but I think a lot of people, like even the person who said, well, you just have to believe me, I'm not a racist. Well, how many people have you assigned to be a bailiff over being a road, a deputy, or on the road doing whatever they call it,
Right.
field work or whatever? How many times have you played a part in that role? How many times have you just accepted that? That is an active way. And you've also made decisions that have pigeonholed people into a certain place, or you've completely pulled the rug out from them. So that is how the concept of racism manifests itself in the workplace. And people they don't understand how to grasp it. And,
Right.
and what does it mean in actions, in words, and how it impacts a lineage of people and their families.
And I think one other thing I'd like to add with that, because with the sheriff's department, I think violence is oftentimes sort of right at the surface, if not just slightly under the surface. And I mean, that's understandable given the kind of work that they do there. It's a paramilitary organization, and I get that. But I think it really sort of highlights here, because sometimes we say silence is violence and things along those lines, but in what we're just describing, it isn't silence, right? It isn't.
Right.
And you may say, I can't be racist because, but at the same time, there are a series of things that you're doing.
Yes.
There are things that and to my mind, it takes a active disbelief. You're actively forgetting the things that you're doing.
Right.
But there's no, and that's my only thing that I want to point out, is there's no, and I thank you for that, there's no question that there may be a lot of little acts, but they all add up, right?
When you email your colleague and you say, hey, so-and-so took FMLA, or so-and-so is a lazy worker.
And that's right out of what happened here.
That is racism. That is a discriminatory act that is grounded in a spiteful fabrication of your own making, and then you did something to impact that person's ability to be employed or to be seen as a valuable employee.
And to be a human being.
That's right.
Right.
You have no right to do that. And so little things like that, I like to, I've noticed a lot of those in being an observer, how, a manager, and once an entity, an employer knows and has been caught red-handed, so to speak, with the email, I mean, there's no, arguing about that. It's there in black and white. For them to allow that employee to have no consequence as a result of that behavior just cumulatively allows the behavior to grow. And I know in Milwaukee Public Schools, it is rampant. I mean, they do it in their sleep.
I'm going to give you one example here that I think should sort of encapsulate everything. This is within weeks of working there. He's the only black person who's making it. And what do the whites, do they ask him, oh, how are you going to get from point A to point B? You're going to take the Underground Railroad? Okay. And do you remember Mr. Smoot? Right?
Yes,
We're asking
I do.
him, okay, about his qualifications.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it turned, and he was teaching a class. Do you remember that?
I remember him
Okay.
teaching a class.
Right,
Yes.
teaching a class in racial equity. Okay? Well, guess what happened at that class for racial equity? He commanded Mr. Lucky to give a presentation about his culture. Okay? Guess what Professor Smoot did?
What did he
Professor
do?
Smoot and the entire class were openly laughing at Mr. Lucky's presentation on black culture. Mr. Smoot, because he's a supervisor, he covered his mouth while he was laughing at Mr. Lucky's presentation about black culture. This is, by the way, this is a man who is an integral part in these investigations into black officers and disproportionate. Another thing we found out is, guess how many people of white skin have been terminated from the Sheriff's Department for sexual harassment?
Probably none.
0. Guess how many of them don't have white skin? All of them.
And that application right there is a glaring indicator. And for the powers that be who claim to be educating others on equity or equality, obviously have not studied, that is the lowest level of any kind of, basically they're saying we're going to name a course something. I'm going to run it, even though I don't know anything. And then I'm going to say we can check the box that we're not racist.
But even in the checking the box, we're going to use our employment power to order a black man to present on black culture. And then when he does, because this is a frequent thing that happens, is they'll use minorities to, exemplify things.
Right.
And then when they get singled out, then they get harassed, which sometimes the manager participates in or doesn't. And, guess what other thing I can update us for on this month here is we can all congratulate Smoot, who's now a captain over the courts. We can all congratulate him on his promotion. Thank you, Danita Ball.
And if we can get some people that begin to recognize that the fact that you have left all of these behaviors unchecked, and then you go out into this city and you have the audacity to ask the people, why is this happening? Why is this happening? It's happening because you are perpetuating it. You are. And so the more we can get away with, the more that it just compiles. And now you can go outside your door, anybody can in the city of Milwaukee, and they can turn on the news at night and all day long actually, and see the fruits of your labor. And we can thank you for that, because you have destroyed this city by abusing the people that are supposed to be leaders. And you have looked the other way, and they have bred this, and it is just multiplied like a gremlin that you throw water on. Okay, they're everywhere. So if we can't expect our leaders to behave in ethical ways, in lawful ways, then you will start to see how people respond to that.
Well, and look at Mr. Lucky, who should be a leader.
He is a leader. He's just not a leader. He's going to make his way. He should not have to. He shouldn't have to incur the personal expense. He should not have to incur the emotional damage and the physical toll it takes on a soul to go through this work. And I know that his work is going to mean something for the long term, because people like Smoot and Zillig and people who don't even have the proper understanding of their duty have got to be weeded out at some point. They have to. And if it takes a group of people to go through the legal system to do this, then that's what we'll do. And I'm really proud of Lucky. I don't know him personally. I've just watched him from afar, and I'm just astounded at his perseverance, his ability to meet these people who are against him every step of the way, and they have every authority and they have every advantage, and yet he is sticking to what is the true essence of equity, equality, all of those pieces, everything that we want to see. So good for him.
Well,
I'm really proud to know that.
That is a whistleblower right there. And that's thank you all, and we appreciate you watching, and we will keep you informed. Stick with us.
Thank you.
All right.